the way how we treat our physical system, it has a huge influence, of course, on the state of our consciousness. If we are bright, if we are clear, or if we are tired, if we are dull, if we are not energetic, if we are without motivation, which we don't have inspiration, we do not have joy in life. This quality of joy, this is how Ayurveda defines the state of health. The climax of it is health is when the mind, the senses, and consciousness are in a state of bliss, of ananda, in a permanent state of ananda. That means when you are happy, when you are really happy, when you are blissful. When you are blissed out, then this is actually what is a great indicator of health.
The simplest state of human awareness is a self-referral field of pure consciousness, a field of all possibilities. Knowledge is structured in consciousness, and we are not in the world is within us. Welcome to Simplest State, where together we explore the nature of consciousness and self-realization. Welcome to Simplest State. I'm Ron, and today we're diving deep into the intersection of ancient healing wisdom and modern science. Before we begin, a quick but important note. Our guest today is a medical doctor, but the information shared in this episode is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not intended as medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your own physician or qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition, and never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you've heard on this show. Our guest today is a true pioneer in the field of healthcare. Dr. Ulrich Bauhofer is a medical doctor, a best-selling author, and arguably one of the leading Ayurveda specialists outside of India. Over 40 years ago, he was among the first Western physicians to scientifically investigate the foundations of Ayurveda. He founded and led Europe's largest Ayurvedic clinic for a decade, and today he reaches millions of followers with practical advice on holistic healthcare. Dr. Bauhofer bridges the gap between traditional holistic health and modern medicine, showing us how physical health is the foundation for higher states of consciousness. Whether you're looking to clear the mental fog, optimize your diet, or simply understand your body's unique blueprint, I think you'll enjoy our conversation today. Dr. Bauhofer, it's my great pleasure to welcome you to Simplest State. I know it's well into the evening where you are in Germany, so thank you so much for taking time to be with us on this program this evening.
It's a great pleasure. I'm happy to be with you, Ron.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Let's start right in because I know it's late for you. You've treated thousands of patients, and now you reach millions on your social media. What is the number one health mistake that you see people making today?
Oh, there are many what people are doing wrongly. But I have a saying that most people kill themselves with fork and knife. That means through their diet, through a wrong diet, through a kind of eating which is not very helpful for our health. And I think this is one of the key issues. But there are, of course, many, many more. For example, that most people are not doing enough exercise, which is a very important point. Most people are not sleeping enough. Very important point. You always can ask people if they are getting up with the help of an alarm clock. And most people are doing this. And we always have to keep in mind that The human being is the only species on this planet which uses an alarm clock to get up. Usually, there's no animal who suffers from insomnia or needs an alarm clock to wake up, but most people do that. So, for example, in Germany, you have 80% of the working people who have problems with sleep. They have sleep disorders, 80%. This is a huge amount.
Wow.
And one reason is, of course, that people get a lot of stress these days. And the World Health Organization, interestingly enough, says that stress is the greatest health issue of this century. And therefore, it's very, very important that we have a very efficient means of stress management. And this is, of course, usually a part of yoga, the system of yoga. And the system of yoga and the system of Ayurveda, they are very intimately connected. And all the old scriptures, the ancient scriptures of Ayurveda, they refer to the scriptures of yoga and the other way around. So stress management is very important. And you know what is extremely an issue today is the issue of longevity. And for longevity, Ayurveda is a fantastic tool because in the most ancient scriptures of Ayurveda, and we have to remember Ayurveda is the most ancient system of medicine which we know of, thousands of years old. But the most ancient texts of Ayurveda, they are about 3,500 years old. And in these texts, longevity is a very, very crucial issue. And what is so interesting that what the modern longevity research actually brings to light today is exactly the same principles and the same recommendations which Ayurveda gives since thousands of years. So this was a long answer to a short question.
It was a long answer, and there's a lot to unpack there. And you brought up some points that I'd really like to go deeper into with you. And the very first one that stood out to me was you talked about diet, the importance of diet. And I realized this even from my limited knowledge of Ayurveda, that there's a very strong emphasis and importance placed on diet. And it reminds me of an Ayurvedic expression, which is that when diet is wrong, medicine is of no use. And when
Exactly.
diet is correct, medicine is of no need. And this, of course, it's strikingly similar to what Hippocrates, the founder of Western medicine, said. He said, "Let food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food." So let's take a few minutes, because diet is clearly so important. Let's take a few minutes on that, because you've also said something that's very interesting. We're very familiar with the expression, "you are what you eat." But you've taken that a step further and said you are what you metabolize.
Yeah.
And I wonder, this is a great expression, and I really love it if you'd elaborate on those points a little bit more for us.
This was actually a German philosopher who said that, because in German it sounds nice. You know, it says in German, I say it, although probably most people will not understand. Der Mensch ist, was ist. Ja, der Mensch ist, was ist. And it means exactly what you said. Man is what he eats. We have to be aware, you know, that all what we take into our system has to be metabolized in order to become our organs, our tissues, our cells. It all has to be processed. We have to understand that we are not a fixed statue. We are a process. While we are talking at the moment and our heart beats and we are breathing and perhaps we are metabolizing our breakfast or our lunch or our dinner, whatever, whenever we have eaten it, our body produces every single second about 7 million new cells. And that means every day about 600 billion new cells every single day.
Wow.
And if we make this aware to us, it's clear, when you go to bed and brush your teeth and look into the mirror, then the next time you do this, look at you very, very carefully. And the next day, when you get up and go to the bathroom and again brush your teeth and look into the mirror, you see someone totally different. It's a different person who looks at you. We have to be aware that the body is constantly changing itself, and it's constantly processing everything what goes into our system, not only what we eat, but also what we see, what we touch, what we hear, everything. All these negative informations we are getting into our body, also to the news, for example, they do something with us. They influence us. And therefore, we have to be careful, because you do not allow anyone to come into your house or come into your apartment. We are usually selective whom we allow to come in. And the same selection we should also have with respect to what we allow to get into our body, into our organism. Of course, we cannot, how is the word? Distinguish everything and say, I don't allow this, because we cannot manipulate everything. But those things which we can, we should be very selective what we allow to get into our system.
It's very interesting, because what you're saying, I mean, we think of metabolism as food that we ingest. But what
Right.
you're pointing out, if I understand correctly, is that everything we take in through our senses is, in a sense, metabolized into
Right.
our bodies.
When we hear happy things, when we speak about happy things, about positive things, it makes something with us. And the same when we speak only negative about other people, for example, or when we hear negative news, when we hear about wars and terrorism and all these negative things, it does something with us. And therefore, it's very crucial that we are very selective if we can do that, if it's in our power that we can select what we get into our body, that we are careful with this.
I think you're saying we don't hide ourselves in a hole somewhere and cut ourselves off,
Right.
but we try to be selective and minimize negative influences in our life.
You have formulated much better than I did. Perhaps a little language problem which we have.
No, it's perfectly clear. I just wanted to make sure I understood correctly.
Yeah, it's very true, because the doors into our organism are our five senses. And therefore, we have to be careful what we let in. This is all what I want to say. With respect to metabolism, it's very important, because it's true what you say, we are not only what we eat, but we are what we digest and metabolize what we eat. And this is very important, because what we eat, when you eat some nice vegetables, out of the vegetables, you transform into your nose, into your ears, into your liver, into your heart, into your kidneys, and you build this up constantly. And therefore, you have to first make sure that the quality of your food should have real highest standard. When you make sure that the quality of your food has high standard, then, because it's the building material, when the design of a building is great, I have a great architect and he has made a beautiful design, but then the construction company comes and the material with which it builds the house and realizes this beautiful design is of very low quality, then after a while the house breaks. And the same is true for our body. So the first thing what is very important, that you have a very high quality of food. And the second is that you have a very high quality of your digestive and metabolic, I call it fire. In Ayurvedic terms, it's called Agni. Agni means fire, because we have to imagine that our body is just like a fire, like an oven. You put something in, and the oven metabolizes it, it burns it. And the same is what the body does. Now, this Agni quality, this digestive and metabolic fire, It's actually changing during the day. It has a biorhythm. In the morning, our digestive power is usually low, and in the evening, it's also low. Therefore, when you get up in the morning and the first thing what you do is to eat a real big meal, your digestive fire is not able to digest it properly because it's on a very low flame, you know, and therefore your breakfast should be very light if you have a breakfast. But it's interesting when I ask people what they take for breakfast and then they tell me what they all eat, it's very heavy stuff usually already in the morning. Then I ask them next, are you hungry in the morning? And they usually say, most of the people say, no, I'm actually not really hungry, but I'm used to it. I'm used to eat something in the morning. So I tell them, when you are not hungry, then don't eat anything and wait until you are hungry. And usually in Ayurveda says the best thing is to have 2 meals a day. Some are even so, there's one text in the Ayurvedic literature we said the ideal is to have 1 meal a day. Second best, 2 meals a day. But you have to be also to take into consideration that we all have a different constitution. And there are people who need 3 meals a day. They have such a strong digestive fire, and when they have that, they become very angry if you don't give them anything to eat. And therefore, you have to give them 3 meals a day. But you always please make sure, this is already a recommendation which I give now, when you eat, don't overeat. Always make sure that after meal you feel energetic and you're not feeling tired and want to lay down now for 1 hour and have a rest and sleep. This is an indication that compared with your digestive fire, you have eaten too much or too heavy.
There's a principle in Ayurveda, isn't there, of not eating to capacity, but eating till about 3/4 of
That's
fullness
true.
of the stomach,
Yeah.
something like that. Can you explain that?
Yeah. You should, half of your stomach, you should fill with solid food, 1/4 with liquid, what you drink, and 1/4 should be empty. It's very interesting, for example, most people have heard of Okinawa. Okinawa is an island in Japan.
Right.
And in Okinawa, it belongs to the blue zones.
Mhm.
And Okinawa is an island where most people, the highest population of old people are living in the world. You
Right.
know?
Right. The greatest longevity.
Yeah.
One of the blues.
Most centenarians, that means those people who are above 100 years, they live there.
Right.
So they have done a research why people there live so long. And what came out was extremely interesting. It came out that the people there, from their childhood onwards, they learn to not overeat, that they always fill their stomach maximum to 3/4. Same what Ayurveda says. And they also do not snack. They don't eat in between their meals, that they snack all the time, what usually people do a lot. And this is what kills basically the Agni, the digestive fire. When you always put something again on your fire, then the fire, it's how you call it, it's
Getting
not
extinguished.
extinguished. That's the
Yes.
right word. The fire gets extinguished. So this is very important that you avoid that.
That is important, isn't it? Because the process of digestion is a continuing process. It goes from one stage to the next to the next. So
Exactly.
if you're in the second or third stage of digesting a meal, and then you eat something and make the digestive system start again at stage one, the whole process is now disrupted, and you're
Right.
not going to digest the food properly.
It's the same when you cook something. You cook, for example, a pasta, some spaghetti. and you boil them, and then, have you invited some friends and someone calls and said, I bring another guy along, and then you put another spaghetti in it, but after 5 minutes the other have cooked already, and then 5 minutes later you put again some spaghettis in, and some are overcooked, the others are okay, and the others are not cooked at all.
You have great analogies. I love that one about you can have an architect design a beautiful building, but if you use very poor quality construction materials, the result isn't going to be good. And that therefore you should eat high quality food, presumably organic food whenever possible. And now this one of digestion in being interrupted much the same way as you keep adding to cooking and disrupting the cooking process. These are wonderful analogies, really. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just had to say that.
It's the same thing, for example, when you sleep. When you sleep and the alarm clock is waking you up, and you are still in the middle of your sleep, the sleep is not finished. It's just like the cooking. The cooking is not finished. When you stop the cooking before it's fully cooked, then it's not properly, it doesn't have the job properly.
Right.
And the same is true with sleep. The same is true, with your digestion. It's very simple principles in nature which you can see in every different aspects. And what is, for example, with Okinawa is so interesting, they say they always keep enough space in between. And this space in between, this is a very, very important principle of nature. And it has a lot to do with our health also. The space in between, for example, when you look at your itinerary and you see everything is crammed, one appointment after the other, you cannot digest it properly, what you have talking, for example, in one meeting, and immediately the next meeting, you can digest it. There's no space in between. When you are sleeping not enough, you have not enough space in between the 2 days. There's not enough space in between. When you are overeating all the time, you have not enough space in between. The whole universe is organized that always there's a lot of space in between. When you meet a person, and it's actually interesting, it decides within the first thousands of a second, I think 300 of a second, it decides if you like this person or you don't like the person. So, and where is it decided? It's in the space in between you and the other person. What happens in between? And for example, when you see how the human brain is structured with the synapses in between the nerve cells,
Synaptic gaps.
the synaptic gap, the space in between, it decides if a neural impulse is modulated, if it's inhibited, if it's enforced. It happens in this space in between. This is the synaptic gap, which is absolutely crucial for how our brain works. Find the space in between. I always tell people when they say they are totally stressed and they are tired, I said, see if in your life is not enough space in between. Also in the relationships, I remember I remember a lady, he came to me and she got a divorce now. So I asked her, she was a patient, why you get divorced? And then she says, he takes the breath, I cannot breathe in because, it's so tight, the relationship is so, there's no space in between. And it's a principle which you can see everywhere in nature, that the space in between is the crucial thing. People say yoga. What is yoga? The state of yoga is not that you are in a lotus position or you make a specific exercise, which is very difficult. The state of yoga is the space between your thoughts. And when you go in meditation, for example, I did my PhD on Transcendental meditation. I'm a great fan of Transcendental meditation. And when you widen this gap between the thoughts, Then you go into the yoga state, which is also called samadhi, the samadhi state, pure consciousness. So this space in between you find everywhere. Also in the field of digestion.
These are wonderful illustrations. And just as you said, nature has these gaps built into it. The night
Right.
turns into day, day goes into night, spring to summer, summer to fall. We have these natural gaps. So I think the main point, I guess, is that you're saying between meals, leave adequate space in between meals so that your digestion is properly processed before you add anything else to it. And I think this whole point you raised about overeating, I think this is at the root of a lot of Western health problems, the tendency to overeat. I don't know if it's true. You can tell me if it is. I'd heard that in Ayurveda, the amount that's actually recommended to eat is about just the amount you could hold
That's
in
true.
two hands. That's about half a stomachful, which
That's
is
true.
way less than most of us eat at a meal. Is that a correct
Yeah,
estimate?
it's true. And you walk into the streets and you see how many people are overweight. And overweight is one of the key health issues because from that, all these metabolic disorders, the cardiovascular disorders, all the disorders which we find mainly today and are the biggest health problems, they come from our wrong diet and that we are not moving, exercising enough and not sleeping enough, having too much stress. Very simple things, actually. But it's very interesting. The term Ayurveda, it means the science of life, the knowledge of life. We can also say it's the knowledge of the laws of life. And the principles, the knowledge of life, the knowledge of Ayurveda is deeply ingrained in us. It's nothing special. When you speak to people about Ayurvedic principles, they all say, okay, this is not nothing new. This is nothing new. It's obvious. And the problem is not that the people do not know how they should behave properly with respect to their health. The problem is that it's not that they do not know. The problem is that they do not do. This is the
Right.
problem.
Why
And
is that? Why is that? I mean, people would rather inject themselves with a drug to curb their appetite
Mhm.
instead of making simple lifestyle adjustments. And
Dangerous.
then again, just to make another parallel between Western medicine and Ayurveda, Western medicine says an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Very obvious. And
Mhm.
Ayurveda says the same thing. Detect imbalances in the physiology early, because if you don't do something to rebalance the system, those imbalances become illness. The illness will then become disease. And once it advances to that stage, it is much more difficult or maybe even impossible to effectively treat. And yet, all of us are guilty, I think, to some extent, of not taking those simple preventative measures. And it's one of the things I love about Ayurveda is its emphasis on prevention. So why is it, and how can you help people implement simple lifestyle or dietary changes that will be effective in terms of preventing them becoming ill?
There's a very important principle. Knowledge has organizing power. When you compare it always with the traffic, when you go by car to a traffic light and the light is red, then you usually stop. You know, when you feel, why should I stop? Because there's a red light. I do not want that a red light tells me if I stop or if I don't stop. And you just continue. It's your choice. But you have to bear the consequence. And the same is true with your body. Our body functions according to specific principles, to laws. These are the laws of life, and they are ingrained in us. If we live according to these laws, everything is fine. But when we violate these laws, then we drift up into an illness. In Ayurveda, you actually, like in any other medical system, The principle is always balance. Balance is the key thing. We call it, for example, in modern physiology, homeostasis. Homeostasis means the balance of the physiological functioning. And the same is true in Ayurveda. In Ayurveda, you distinguish between three, you could say, biological programs. They're called Vata, Pitta, Kapha. They are Sanskrit terms. Vata means movement. Everything what moves in our system is directed and geared by this Vata principle. If you lift your hand, if your heart beats, the lungs are going out, a cell is dividing. Wherever there's movement, Vata is active and gearing these processes. Pitta is digestion, metabolism, heat production. Everything what goes in our system, Pitta is digesting it. The Agni principle, which I mentioned, the fire, is very much related to Pitta. And Kapha is the mass, the material. And these three, they're all working together. And depending what is the ideal relationship and combination of these three in your system, this defines your constitution and your ideal balance. And this is different for every person. Therefore, the great thing about Ayurveda is that you always have to do an individualized treatment. If a person comes to you, you see what is his imbalance. You don't see what is his disease, but you say what is his imbalance. And then you treat the imbalance. Because there can be very different symptoms arising from the same imbalance. When you treat each symptoms individually, you have so many different medicines, and you disregard the underlying imbalance, then you always treat the symptoms, but you do not treat the cause. And in Ayurveda, you always treat the cause, not only the symptom.
This is a big and important difference between Western medicine and Ayurveda. Like Western medicine is focused on wait until you have symptoms and then we'll give you something to alleviate those symptoms. But as you said, without treating the underlying cause. Whereas Ayurveda says, let's find what's causing this. What's causing it? Why are you ill? And let's treat that imbalance, and then the symptoms will dissipate on their own.
And you can imagine when you have isolated, when you have identified the imbalance, you surround this imbalance. And then you shoot from all different angles in order to create the balance again. When you have, for example, an imbalance, and you treat it with a medicine, with an herbal medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, and at the same time, you eat in a way which increases the imbalance again, then the medicine is not very useful. And the same is true for many other modalities which you implement. You have to make sure that all the different treatments which you give, they support each other. They are not counteracting, but they are going in the same direction.
Right.
That means you surround the imbalance and then you shoot from different angles to eliminate the imbalance.
And they support each other and amplify the effect.
That's it.
That's wonderful. You were talking about blue zones earlier and Okinawa and longevity. And it reminds me of the fact that the Ayurvedic textbooks actually begin with the expression Ayurveda Amritanam.
That's it.
Ayurveda is for immortality. So longevity is fundamental in the objectives of Ayurveda. And
absolutely.
In what sense is that practice in your practice, or how do you apply the principles of longevity? Is it a separate consideration, or does it just mean healthy lifestyle, healthy diet?
That's it. Basically, that's it. There's a discipline in Ayurveda which is called Rasayana. And this is the discipline of longevity. You know what longevity is today? It's hyped enormously. But in Ayurveda, it's thousands of years old. It's basically a holistic prevention strategy. because the problem of our health care system, basically, we do not have a healthcare system in most countries. We have a disease system, but not a health system, a healthcare system. And for me, when I was studying medicine, when I was a student, at the end of my studies, I was thinking what I have learned now. I was now a medical doctor. And then I was thinking what I have learned because I wanted to become a health expert. And then I became aware that during my whole studies, and it takes, a medical study takes 6.5 years, I have not heard one single lecture on health. All what I have heard was about disease,
Right,
you
right.
know? And I was not a health expert. I didn't have a clue about health. I knew only about disease. You cannot you cannot say this is the fault of the doctors. It's the fault of the system. The
Right.
system is not dealing with health. The system is dealing with disease. And in old India and in old China, for example, the doctors were responsible for the health of their patients, of their people. And if the people were falling sick, then the doctors were considered to have not done a good job.
Their success wasn't measured in treating disease, it was in preventing illness.
Right. That's
That's
it.
the way it should be. That's brilliant.
And see, for example, in Germany, I'm sure it's the same true in most the industrialized nations. We have a huge problem now with our healthcare system because of the demographic development. People are getting older. And the principle is the older they get, the sicker they become. The sicker they become, the more costly it is for the healthcare system. And the healthcare system is not able to finance that anymore. So what they do, they raise the charges for the health insurances. At the same time, they diminish what the health insurance is really paying. The people have to pay for themselves more and more, which the healthcare system, the health insurance does not cover anymore. And this you can change only through the focus on prevention. You have just to change the strategy. The strategy must be focus on prevention, because then the people, the older they get, they should remain healthy and enjoy their older age, because they are very, very important for the society. In the great high cultures of the world, the older people, they were always respected for their wisdom and for their experience, and the young people were asking for their advice. And what you find today, everyone wants to look young and be young and have some operations and all these kind of stuff.
I'd like to say that you're a great example of what you're talking about because, if I may say so, you're in your 70s. You've trained over 600 Ayurvedic lifestyle coaches. You're still running a thriving practice. So, what is your secret to staying so energized?
I was doing internal medicine for a while, and then I met Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, he actually brought transcendental meditation to the West. And as I mentioned before, I have done my PhD study on that, how it affects the cardiovascular system. Was very interesting, because what turned out in this study was that during meditation, the physiological processes in your body are exactly opposite to the stress reaction.
Oh,
So it's exactly the opposite. And this is today so important, because we cannot eliminate the stress nowadays, because it's getting more and more. But what we can do, we can change the way how we react to it. That means we increase our resilience, we increase our stress resistance. And from my experience, the best for this is meditation, TM in my case, because I'm a great fan of it, because it's so simple. You know, it's so extremely simple. And this was what Maharishi has brought to the West. It comes from the yoga system. And he has invited me to be a part of an international group of scientists who did research on consciousness. And after a while, he said, we have done a lot of research now on consciousness with a method of consciousness. That means a technology of consciousness. And what we should do now in order to reinforce the whole thing, we have to do something for our body. And there is a sister discipline of yoga, which is Ayurveda. And therefore, then he got together all the leading Ayurvedic physicians in India. And together with Western scientists, and I had the big luck to be a part of them, they they modernized the ancient system of Ayurveda and translated all these terms and principles in modern scientific terms. The idea was to create a marriage between Ayurveda, this most ancient wisdom, and modern science. And this was the principle, because the truth behind everything must be the same and they should reinforce each other. And this was the principle. And therefore, to answer your question, I got in touch with these Ayurvedic principles rather quickly or rather early in my life. And then because I treated patients with them, and I did it also myself. You know, what I told to patients, I should not tell them anything what I'm not doing myself. And therefore, this was a reason why I had the great luck not to suffer from great diseases during my life.
That's great.
Wow.
There's a couple of wonderful points too, if I can just go back to them for a second. One is that because we've been giving Western medicine a bit of a hard time, we talk about how it only emphasizes treatment of symptoms and not prevention. But the truth is, Western medicine, of course, has a great deal to offer.
Absolutely.
The integration is important because antibiotics and surgeries and these tools of modern medicine are invaluable to society, and they've saved countless lives. So I love the fact that you're integrating both values so that you have the modern treatments when it's needed, but you also have the emphasis on lifestyle, diet, and prevention that Ayurveda brings forth. And you also mentioned how this was back in the 80s when you started researching this and going into it. And I think it's fascinating because back then, no one had even heard of Ayurveda.
That's true.
And that was really the beginning of an upsurge in knowledge about Ayurveda that has since spread worldwide. Now you find every health spa here and there in every part of the world, Ayurvedic treatments. Everyone knows about Ayurveda. Earlier you spoke about Vata, Pitta, Kapha. I'll bet most of our viewers know that those are what are known as the three doshas, because everyone has heard these things. So you were really a pioneer in terms of you were at the cutting edge of the whole emergence of Ayurveda. You really led the charge to what has now become a very well established and accepted and respected form of holistic healthcare.
That was a great privilege. And I'm very grateful for that. Especially, I'm very grateful to Maharishi because he invited me to be part of that.
Now, you spoke about, meditation, and specifically in your case, transcendental meditation as a tool for combating stress. And I think no one these days is a stranger to stress. Everyone is feeling it in one form or another.
That's very true.
And you raised a great point in that you cannot get away from stress, but what's important is how you deal with it. Because the truth is, you can go live in a cave somewhere and still be stressed about finding a snake in your cave or a spider or your next meal. I mean, it's not about the external forces, it's about how we deal with them. And you've found that meditation, as many have found, is a very effective tool. So I want to go back to that because I think it's so important for everyone. And for people that are feeling stressed and overwhelmed and disconnected, very concisely, tell us what is one thing you would change tomorrow to help people who are suffering from stress or anxiety, as so many people are.
To tell you the truth, I would teach them TM. And I'm doing this actually. I'm doing it in my practice. Every month, I have a course for patients who come to me, and I teach them TM. I'm doing this since now over 50 years. And I'm every time again, every month when I do this, I'm again and again totally astonished how this simple and natural technique has such tremendous effects, which are immediate. It's not that they have to practice this for a year or half a year or a few months. They see it from the first day onwards. And this is actually what was for me so convincing, because was very, very skeptical when I learned TM. But when I learned it, it was, although I was skeptical, my very first meditation which convinced me. It's a very, very simple technique and very, very powerful. And this is what, when people are stressed, this is the first thing what I would teach them.
Fantastic. And what would be your approach to integrating the principles of Ayurveda into the modern urban lifestyle?
Well, I'm a great fan, and this is also experience, due to the experience which I made, a great fan of micro steps. When patients are coming to me, I go with them through their whole day, their lifestyle and what they are doing, what their profession is, their whole social, their diet, of course, their symptoms, their diseases, everything. But what is very, very important is to not exaggerate what they should do. You know, that you don't give them a program which would totally change their life. It's not possible, because no one is able to do that. So
Right.
what I discuss with them, when I see what they are not doing right, what they could do very easily, what changes they could implement in their daily routine, say maximum three things, maximum.
Right.
Three things maximum at one time, perhaps only two, or perhaps even only one thing, what they can easily change, easily, focuses on easily, and then making it an habit. Exchange a bad habit through a good habit, health damaging through a health promoting habit. Because we are only just habits. Our
Right.
whole life is just habits.
Sure.
So change the habits, but do it in micro steps. When you are eating a lot in the morning, then just change that. Having a light meal. When you go to bed every day at 1 o'clock at night, then just change it, and do not say now you go to bed at 10 o'clock, but you go at 12:30, then at 12, and then at 11:30, and then try to go back to 10:30 p.m., and then go to bed, and then make sure when you sleep properly, perhaps you can 2 days during the week or 3 days you go to bed even a little earlier, that you have enough sleep and wake up without an alarm clock. And then you suddenly feel, I feel much fresher, and it's good, because it's so important. When you imagine our brain, it weighs about 2% of our whole body, 2%. But our brain is using up 25% of all the energy which we are consuming during the day. 25%. That means 2% of our body weight is consuming 25% of our energy. That means our brain cells, our neurons, they are having a very high metabolism. And that means they are producing a lot of metabolites. you know I have to apologize for my English.
Your English is fine. It's absolutely correct. Metabolites.
Metabolites, and these are proteins toxic proteins. And every day we are producing about 7 grams, our brain, 7 grams of toxic proteins. And that makes, when we sum it up over the whole year, 2.5 kilos, 2.5 kilograms of toxic metabolites. And that means about twice the amount which our brain weighs itself. We are producing rubbish. And this rubbish, the brain has to eliminate. And this happens only in sleep. What happens in sleep? Our brain cells, they are shrinking to about 60% of their volume, in the waking state. And through that, you create, again, we have it here, the space in between, the brain cells. And then in the night, the cells, they are excreting these toxic metabolites in this space in between. It's actually called the glymphatic system, which has been only detected about 15 years ago at the University of Rochester. And now the cerebrospinal fluid is flooding the brain and excreting all this rubbish out of the brain and bringing it into the lymphs in our neck region, and then it's eliminated through the liver and the kidneys. And this happens only in the sleep. And therefore, it's so important, when we are waking up and you feel really refreshed, it means that all these toxic substances are out. When you feel still dumb and cannot concentrate properly because not slept enough, that means all this stuff is still there.
I've heard the term brain ash in English. I think that's
Mhm.
these
That's it.
these toxic metabolites.
Yeah.
That is a wonderful overview. And I'd like, if I can, I want to hold you down to some practical specifics for people, because Ayurveda talks about the importance of the Dinacharya, the daily routine, which you touched on. And I wonder, for the benefit of our viewers and listeners, can you run through for us just an example of an ideal daily routine
Daily
from an
routine.
Ayurvedic perspective? Not that we're telling everyone to follow these or to make radical changes, but let's please hear what would be the Ayurvedic ideal Dinacharya or daily routine.
Now, because you said, what's so important, the marriage between this ancient wisdom, which is the ancient wisdom, not of India, it's the ancient wisdom of life. It's not an Indian medicine, it's the ancient system of life. And what is now important for this is it's also in our modern medicine, it's called chronobiology. That means the biology of time. Whatever I tell you now, just the people who would like to pick up one or the other thing, just take that what is good for you. I think
Good.
I'll
Well
change.
said. Yes.
Yeah. What is good for you and what you can really do. Do these things which you can do, and don't do things which you cannot do,
And don't strain.
and don't strain. you know this is important. So when we go now through a dinacharya, an ideal dinacharya, that means a daily routine which would be perfect, that you wake up early in the morning, go to bed early and wake up early. Early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise, this saying.
Right. So what is early?
Ideally, from an Ayurvedic point of view, it would be before 6 o'clock. It would be before 6 o'clock because then the Kapha period starts. The Vata period ends at 6 o'clock, and then it goes between 2 and 6. And then the Kapha period starts. And the Kapha period is there to start the day but not immediately stressful, but prepare for the day. And ideally would get up, and the first thing what you do, you expose yourself to the sunlight. And when you do this, you get a lot what is called the near infrared light, what we have discovered today, the near infrared light. And this near infrared light, it stimulates, first of all, your mitochondria. That means the parts of your cell which create energy, the powerhouses of your cells. And this stimulates this near infrared light. It stimulates the mitochondria. The first thing.
Sorry, I'm so
Yeah.
sorry. Please don't lose your train of thought because I want to
Mhm.
continue right there. But I just want to add here because what you just said, I know from having read, I think it was in Sushrut Sangita,
Mhm.
where Sushrut emphasizes that one of the most important, maybe the best thing that you can do for your health is to take a walk in the early morning sun. So what you just explained would be the scientific reason for that, why he said, and this was thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, but he
Absolutely.
knew and said an early morning walk in the sun as the sun is coming up, when it has the most life-giving properties. And now you've just explained to us exactly why that is true. Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, it's fine. And what happens through that, this is the second thing, is that you balance, you calibrate your biorhythms. You know, our biorhythms, it have been impaired totally with the development of the electric light. Before that, and this was just 150 years ago, Edison, when he invented the bulb, the electric bulb, then this was beginning of a great revolution. And this revolution makes it possible that we change the night into the day. When we make a picture of a satellite picture of, for example, of Europe 100 years ago, if this would have been possible, and today, you know, you wouldn't have seen 100 years ago nothing, and today it's a totally enlightened continent. The same is true for US and Canada.
Have you ever been to Las Vegas?
No.
The nighttime is daytime in Las Vegas.
So and this impairment of the, which is called, that we have too much light. We are intoxicated with light, but electric light, not natural light, but this electric light, this unnatural light, which impairs totally our biorhythms. And this is the big problem, because the biorhythms are calibrated only by the sunlight, by sun and darkness, darkness and sun, and this. So this is very important. And when you have this morning walk, then your biorhythms are calibrated again. This is the first thing. Then the second thing, what you should do is, you can do it at the same time when you go out, for example, at the window, and when you have a garden, then you go out there and drink something. In Ayurveda, for example, I always take a warm lemon water. That means you boil the water, let it cool down, and have a fresh lemon, the juice of a fresh lemon. And if you like, you can have also some good honey with it. Or if you do not like that, you take just a glass of lukewarm water. And then ideally, you clean your bowels. Ideally, that would happen. Then you go and scrape your tongue, which is very important because it changes the microbiome in your mouth. And through this change of microbiome, the nitrate, it's called nitrate, is changed into nitrit. This is a chemical process. Then you produce this nitric oxide, and this is very important for opening the bronchi and dilatation of your arteries. That means it lowers the blood pressure. So this is quite interesting that scraping the tongues, it lowers your blood pressure,
Amazing.
you know.
Amazing.
And this is what in India, in Ayurveda, this is since thousands of years, this is propagated. So it has a blood pressure lowering influence when you do that. What is also good when you take, for example, some oil, ideally sesame oil, and gargle with it, and this is called in Ayurveda gandusha, that you just put it for 5 or 10 minutes in your mouth and then spit it out again, because this cleans also your microbiome. It's also very good for your sinuses and has a great impact on the teeth. It sterilizes also the mouth. That means all the bad bacteria are going out. Then have your bath or your shower. If you have time, you can even have an oil massage, for example, with sesame oil, if you have time for that. If you don't have time, do it at the weekend, for example. It's also very good for the skin, also for the health of the skin. Then, when you are very hungry, then eat something, but do not eat it immediately after getting up, but do it wait at least an hour before you do something. Ideally, if you have, done some little exercise, perhaps some yoga practices, you have done your meditation, when you do some asanas, are these physical, very simple physical exercises, yoga exercise. Don't strain when you do yoga asana. And then have your meditation, whatever your meditation is, your technique is. But as I mentioned, my personal favorite is TM. But when you have a meditation technique which you like and which you have very good results, then do that. And then have a little meal if you are hungry. If you are not hungry, then don't eat anything in the morning. And eat, for example, some fruits or some boiled fruits, or have some porridge, some light porridge if you are hungry. And then you go to your work and do what you have to do, but don't have a lot of snacks in between. And always try, this is also important, when you are, for example, sitting the whole day on the computer, that in between you just go up and do some squats or have some running on the spot, that you move, you get your metabolism a little bit active. One has found that, for example, when you do 8,000 steps every day, that you can reduce your risk for a heart attack by 50%. This was a study which was done at Harvard. And in Sydney, they have done a study when you have 3 minutes during the day where you have some physical exercise and strain yourself a little bit and raise your heart rate, then you reduce it also by almost 50%, the risk for a heart attack. So it's important that you do something during the day and not sit all the time. Do something and move in between.
And it doesn't have to be extreme or long or
No,
strenuous, as long
no.
as you do something, even for 3 minutes, like you said.
Exactly. And what is also, do not use elevators if possible. When you are working with 20 stories, it's a different story. But when you have, for example, when you live in an apartment building and you are living in the 3rd floor, then don't use the elevator, use the stairs. Make the stairs your friends. This is a very important aspect, because one says when you make one stair, it gives you 1 minute of longevity, of a longer life. One stair, 1 minute. So this would be good to do, just to keep in mind. And then you have your lunch. If possible, you can have your lunch, should be your main meal. And how we do this, we have already spoken about. Have a light meal, not too heavy. Eat a lot of vegetables. This is very important. When you eat mainly vegetables. Do not eat too much protein. At the moment, protein is very hyped, but you should not have too much protein, especially not animal protein, but more plant protein. And always see that they chew enough. This is also very important. And make sure that after meals you do not feel tired.
And when you say plant protein, you mean like legumes and beans, lentils
Yeah,
and dals and
right,
things like. Okay,
right.
okay.
And then during the day you do your work, and do not overwork if possible, because when you are late, have late works, then your concentration is also going down. And it's important that you keep always this freshness. And if possible, after meal, after your lunch, go for a walk. And this is also important, how your blood sugar is not rising and falling. This is what snacking does a lot. When you do a walk, then your blood sugar is lowered rather quickly, because due to the muscular activity, it also into the cells immediately, and the pancreas doesn't have to produce and eliminate and secrete too much insulin. You even, when you have, for example, a meeting with a colleague, or you are three people, then no one has to, probably it's not in your working agreement that you have to do this in your office. You can go for a walk, and have a walk and talk and a walking meeting, because with this you have 5 really good effects. First of all, you have your meeting. Second, you have a walk, you are moving. That also means that the blood flow to your brain is increasing. That means your cognitive functions are better. Number 3, you have light. You go to the sunlight. Most people have much too less sunlight during the day, and they have all the light in the night when they should not, when it should be dark. So the body is not used to that. It has not changed so much in 150 years. So you have light. Then you go out and have fresh air. This is another thing. And then the fifth thing is you have a good mood. When you are going out, the mood is increasing, especially when the sun is rising, and immediately the serotonin, the happiness molecules are produced. These 5 effects you have just by having the meeting outside and not in your office.
So whenever possible, get outside. That's, I
Yeah,
think, important for parents too, to remember with their children always on their devices. Put
exactly.
down the device and get outside at least for some time every day, I guess.
Right. Also, very important that you drink enough during the day, that you have enough fluid. Many people having not enough fluid. This is also a very important aspect.
How much is enough?
It depends also on your body weight, but in principle, when you have above 2 liters a day, and ideal water is good, but you have a good water is also very important. Don't have it in plastic, because plastic is a big problem. Usually people today, every week, they have a credit card of microplastic they consume into their body. 1 liter of water in a plastic bottle, you have about 200,000 particles of microplastic and nanoplastic. So, and then have a nice evening and have some nice things and be with your family and with your friends. And at the end of the day, have a meditation, and then you can enjoy the evening because you are fresh in your mind again. And then have an early evening, go to bed as early as possible. 10 o'clock would be ideal according to Ayurveda. At 10 o'clock, you are usually tired. And then you think, I should not go to bed so early. And then you stay until 11. And at 11 or 10:30, you become again fresher and clearer, because then the Pitta time starts. But the pitta time is there for digestion. And in the night, it's not for digestion, the food, but it's for digestion, the experiences of the day. And this is what the brain is also doing. Especially, one has found, there's an old saying which I always got from my grandparents. They said the bedtime before, or the sleep before midnight counts double. And this is what scientific research has also verified, that the sleep before midnight, it creates more these deep sleep phases. This is very important for regenerating the brain because it eliminates all those informations which are trivial and keeps the informations which are not trivial, which are important. And this happens before midnight. What is also important, eat as early as possible dinner. Not late dinner, but early dinner. Why? Because the enzymes for digestion are not produced in the night anymore. The genes which code for these enzymes are switched off in the night. And also the microbiome, which is very important for digestion. It goes away from the mucous membrane of the intestines and goes into the inner part of the intestine and is not cooperating with the digestive process anymore. So that means all the very important digestive processes from a scientific point of view are not very effective in the night anymore. Therefore, do not eat heavy in the night and eat as early as possible.
And try to go to bed by 10.
If possible.
That's an important point because we tend to think in terms of sleep, in terms of the quantity of sleep, but it's also the quality of sleep. So the sleep we get from 2 a.m. to 10 a.m. is not nearly as beneficial as the sleep we might get from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. The same 8 hours, but one is far more beneficial for our health.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
So this would be quite a good Dinacharya when you could keep to that.
That is fantastic. Now, going back a little bit on diet, because we find in the Vedic literature, we learn that there are three qualities: sattva, rajas, and tamas. And these three qualities apply to food also. Sattvic, which is life-giving, creating; Rajasic, which is sort of energizing, perpetuates motion; and then Tamasic, which is life-destroying, dulling. So for those of us on a spiritual path, following some practice or meditation, what are the foods or what are the dietary recommendations for someone that wants to follow a sattvic diet?
Let's start with the cooking process. The cook himself should be in a good mood. Because when the cook is in a bad mood, he basically ingests all these bad emotions into the food.
Right.
And therefore, one always said the best food is always cooked by the mother.
Right.
Because she cooks all her love into the food.
Yes.
So this is a very important Sattvic principle. There are many people who actually are so sensitive. They say, probably the cook was not in a very good mood today. And they taste that. So this is the first thing. The second thing is that the food should be fresh. It should not have been stored for a very long time. It should be fresh. For example, the fruits, the vegetables, it should be fresh. And then what is, of course, Sattvic food is food which is natural and which is mainly vegetarian. That means vegetables, fruits, they are mainly Sattvic foods. And you should not have too much meat, especially not red meat, because this is heavy to digest. And what is, of course, very often the thing, that when the animals are slaughtered, that all the stress and all the aggression and all that is, of course, put into the meat. And this is what we are all eating. And especially nowadays, how these animals are raised. It's just terrible condition. They are fed with antibiotics and sedatives. Otherwise, they couldn't even survive. And with hormones, which we are all taking in, because this is what we are all taking in. So when you take meat, then you should always make sure that it's meat from a very good organic, but take it as less as possible. And when you take you call it chicken or something or fish, but even when you take fish, also sweetwater fish is very often better because from the sea it's usually very contaminated with heavy metals or with plastic and all these kinds of this is unfortunate. But this is the situation. So this is what Sattvic food in principle is. And the other food, which is called Tamasic food, bad energy. It's just a matter of the quality of energy which you ingest.
So these Tamasic foods are the foods to avoid.
Right. The Rajasic food, which is when it's very, for example, it's very hot spices. This is which makes people a little bit aggressive, perhaps, and irritable.
Stimulating. Okay.
Stimulating,
Yeah.
right.
What would be some examples of Tamasic food that we should avoid?
Yeah, when you take a lot of meat or when you take food which has stored for a long time, which is not fresh, which has been contaminated with fungus or something.
So like old food, stale
Old
food.
food, stale food.
There's a lot of talk these days about ultra processed foods and the
Yeah.
importance of avoiding those. Anything you would comment about those?
You have heard perhaps of these AGEs, advanced glycation end products, they're called. And when you have, for example, when you have French fries, fried stuff, when you cook them along, when you fry it, then you create these AGEs, they are called. And they are not very good because they stimulate inflammations. These silent inflammations, they are not very good for your health because they are the basis, for example, for all these metabolic diseases and cardiovascular disorders and cancer and all these things which we want to avoid.
Right. So in general, Ayurveda seems to recommend a lacto-vegetarian diet, not a vegan diet, but lacto-vegetarian, including dairy products, correct?
Dairy products, yes. Dairy products, but you also have to make sure that the dairies have a good quality. Important, they are not highly processed. For example, that the milk comes from an organic source. That would be important. And it's not homogenized.
Right. Unhomogenized milk,
Yeah.
yes, is better.
Yeah.
So the dairy products that come from an organic dairy farm and are made from non-homogenized milk.
Right.
Now, another thing that's very much talked about today, a fad sort of, but I think it might be a good thing. I'd like to hear from you about it, is what they call intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
Which is basically means leave sufficient gap between your meals. That I think the ideal regimen that they talk about is 16 hours between your last meal of the day and the next time you eat, with about an 8-hour window for the 2 meals in the day. Now it sounds a bit different maybe from most people's habits, but seems to line up somewhat with the idea of Ayurveda of don't eat too late at night, and then don't snack, and then don't have a big breakfast, have a light breakfast if you have breakfast at all, and then have your main meal at lunch, which would seem to me to sort of correspond to intermittent fasting. Is that right?
That's it. In Ayurveda, this is also propagated since thousands of years. It's called Langhana.
Langhana.
Langhana, what is intermittent fasting, this 16-8 rule. There are also 24 rules or 18:6 rule or 18:10 rule, but the most popular is 16:8.
Ah,
And what actually happens that it stimulates the process which is called autophagia. It was actually a Japanese scientist, Yoshinori Osumi is his name, and he got the Nobel Prize for that, for his research on autophagia. And autophagia means the recycling and purifying process and mechanism of the cell. That means when you, for example, have a non-functional protein, in the cell, it's not working anymore properly, and you eat a lot of protein, that the body, the cell, registers that the protein is available. That means the amino acids which make up the proteins is all available, and it leaves out the protein which is not functional anymore. When you do not eat so much proteins, then the body says, okay, let's do one thing. We recycle these non-functional proteins. That means we metabolize it, and we take all the amino acids which are there and build up new structures. And this is what the recycling aspect of this autophagia is. It means recycling the things which are already there, but not functional anymore, but make them functional again. And the other thing is those structured, for example, organelles like mitochondria or other structures of the cell, just eliminate them. And also viruses or bacteria, this is also part of autophagia. And this is actually stimulated through intermittent fasting.
so this is a good thing, autophagy.
Very good thing.
Okay.
Very good thing.
Good. I think it's so interesting. You talked. What was the term? Langhana. This principle.
It means makes the body lighter.
Oh, for sure. When you do it, you feel the difference. Absolutely.
Right. Take out what is called in Ayurveda all these, the rubbish, which automatically comes in the process of metabolism. This is called ama in Ayurveda, and you eliminate this ama through this autophagia.
Fantastic. It's always so interesting to me that here in the West, we find, someone talks about, turmeric, it's so valuable and it has all these good properties and it strengthens the immune system and it's antibacterial and it's antiviral and it's a blood purifier. And then it's, ginger is so good. And then cinnamon is so good and intermittent fasting. And they act like it's a discovery and something new. And isn't this marvelous? And let's sell it in capsules and as supplements. These things are established in Ayurveda as principles of normal, healthy lifestyle and diet since thousands and thousands and thousands of years.
That's it. So nothing new under the sun, actually.
Nothing new under the sun. Exactly right.
Only what is really fascinating that we investigated now in our terms, in our modern language. And this is what Maharishi always tried to put together the ancient wisdom, the ancient Vedic wisdom. It's not only Ayurveda, it's also Sthapatya Veda, for example, the architecture, ancient Vedic architecture, or Jyotish, this is the Vedic astrology or cosmology. On the other side, the principles of modern science. And this brings together and see it's basically the same. We have to only translate it into the modern language. That's all. But the principle, the truth, it did not change much.
Right.
And this is very fascinating about that, to discover that.
Absolutely. It's the same human body, and the truths about it were revealed in Ayurveda thousands of years ago, but we tend to ignore them, unfortunately.
But Ron, you know what? A part of your channel is also higher states of consciousness. And we have to be aware that the way how we treat our physical system, it has a huge influence, of course, on the state of our consciousness. if we are bright, if we are clear, if we are tired, if we are dull, if we are not energetic, if we are without motivation, which we don't have inspiration, we do not have joy in life. This quality of joy, this is how Ayurveda defines the state of health. The climax of it is health is when the mind, the senses, and consciousness are in a state of bliss, of ananda, in a permanent state of ananda. That means when you are happy, when you are really happy, when you are blissful, when you are blissed out, then this is actually what is a great indicator of health.
Thank you for raising that. I think that's a wonderful point, because really, health is not just the absence of disease. Health is thriving on every level: mind, body, senses, environment. And for those who are on a spiritual journey and working towards developing higher states of consciousness, maintaining a good state of health through which they can take recourse to Ayurveda to assist them is tremendously beneficial on that journey.
Absolutely. And the Sanskrit term for health is vasta, svasta. Sva is the self, and sta is established. So health means to be established in the self. And what is the self? This is not the ego, but this is this pure state of consciousness, which is deeply ingrained in our system. It's there anyway. It's just a matter to experience it.
The self with a capital S, not the small s.
Right.
Yes, absolutely
Capital.
right. Absolutely right. You studied in India with Indian Vaidyas during the 80s with some of the greatest Ayurvedic Vaidyas, Vaidya being an Ayurvedic physician.
Yeah.
You studied with some of the very best of them. And I'm wondering, what do you think is the most important thing you took away from your time of study with these great Indian physicians?
Because they taught me the science of health, and I had learned the science of disease in my studies. I spent about 4.5 years altogether, not in one stretch, but altogether in India. And what I really liked to see, that people, they take care of their health right from the beginning of their lives, because they are taught, it's in the culture, it's ingrained into the culture, the way how they eat, the way how they behave, for example, also the way how they respect elders. And the respect for elders, this is a so-called achara sayana. Achara sayana means a rejuvenation method through our behavior. That means how we behave, that we are honest, that we are truthful, that we are respectful towards all people, that we are polite, all these things.
Right, right.
And these are very important factors.
Is good behavior. In other words, good behavior. Same as good diet and
Right.
good influences, as we spoke earlier. We metabolize everything, and our behavior is also a part of that.
Yeah.
There's another thing, just to get very specific for a moment. People talk a lot of these days about having a mental fog, that they're unclear, there's a dullness. What would you say, or what would Ayurveda say in terms of the cause of that, the treatment of it, perhaps what kind of foods or habits they should avoid or partake of in order to reduce or eliminate this mental fog?
This is typical what we would call in Ayurveda ama, this fog, when it's foggy. And when you eliminate the ama, when you do some detox programs, there's a very effective detox program in Ayurveda which is called Panchakarma. It's a detox program, purification program. Detox means you create the environment that the body can activate all their detox mechanism, which it has. You create just the environment that the body is doing this, because the body has to do it itself. And what I, just to come back also to this question, what I learned in Ayurveda, there is a principle which is called Satmya, Satmya and Asatmya. The principle of Satmya means that it is compatible, compatibility, and what is compatible to me. But when you go to the source of this term, Sat means truth, and Mia means my. So Satmya means what is my truth? What is my truth? Not the truth of someone else, but my truth. And that means you have to develop a kind of sensitivity. What is good for you and what is not good for you. What is Sattvic, what is non-Sattvic. That the body, it gives you a signal. Do this and don't do this, in order to keep the system into a balance. And this is basically the goal of it, that you develop this sensitivity to automatically and spontaneously do what is good for you, what is good for your balance, what is good for your health, what is good for your mental attitudes, what is good for your happiness. Because when you are happy, it's something very good for us when we are happy, but it's also very good for our environment because they benefit from it when we are in a good mood. Infect them with that.
Listen to your body. In other words,
Right.
be aware of, be sensitive to what
Exactly.
your body is telling you. When you say that too, it reminds me of another term from Ayurveda, okasatmya,
Hmm.
suitability by habituation.
Right.
And I only mention it because you reminded me of it, first of all. But secondly, because what that principle is of okasatmya, because something may not be inherently good or suitable, but we've become habituated to it. And therefore, Ayurveda prescribes don't suddenly change habits, don't
Hmm.
suddenly quit bad habits. Do it gradually because your body, your physiology is habituated to that. And it's not good to shock or stress the system. So do it gradually, yes?
Yeah. For example, when you stop smoking, do it gradually.
Do it gradually. Now, I know it's getting very late for you, Dr. Bauhofer. I'm going to have to let you go. One last question, and we can make it short. But for any listener or viewer who wants to start their Ayurvedic journey today, what one thing would you recommend they might do to start on a good Ayurvedic, holistic, healthy lifestyle?
I think the one thing, you should select what is easy for you to change from all what you have heard today, what would be good for you. Start with one which is most simple for you to change. And
Fantastic.
then start your journey and then see this habit. And then after 2 weeks, you do not think even about it anymore. Then you go to the next one and then you go to the next one. But just be good to yourself. Just be good to yourself and don't intoxify yourself.
That's a great answer. So it's not a one size fits all. Whoever you are, do this. Pick one thing that appeals to you, that resonates with you, that you can implement comfortably and easily without strain. Start there and bit by bit improve. Thank you so much, Dr. Bauhofer. This has been a tremendous pleasure, very educational, and I'm sure our viewers have really learned a lot and enjoyed it so much. You're such a pleasant speaker and so clear in your illustrations and your definitions and your explanations. Are there any closing words you'd like to say?
Yeah, I want to thank you very much because it was a great pleasure also to speak with you. I have to apologize that my English has really, I noticed it while I was speaking that it has become a little rusty. But I hope nevertheless that it was Understandable.
It was more than understandable. It resonated deeply with me, and I'm sure with all the viewers. And I thank you for that. And you have a very popular YouTube channel. I'll be sure to place the link to that in the description for this video for our viewers, although it is in
It's
German,
in
but
German, yes.
translation is available on YouTube. I'm not sure how good the translation is, but we'll make sure that a link is posted. So again, my thanks to you, Dr. Bauhofer. We really enjoyed speaking with you today.
Thank you very much. Good health to all the people who have listened to us. Good health to you and enjoy.